Lynda Mann, 1983, Narborough. A shortcut led to the case that changed DNA forever. Every town has a place people pass without thinking. A road beside a church, a path behind a cemetery, a shortcut that feels ordinary because it belongs to everyday life. But sometimes, after one night, a place like that changes forever. The same route people once used without fear becomes a name whispered in the community, a landmark tied to grief, and a reminder that danger does not always arrive from somewhere far away. In the village of Narborough, Leicestershire, one of those places was a footpath known locally as the Black Pad. It ran near All Saints' Church, close to the cemetery, and toward Forest Road, not far from the grounds of Carlton Hayes Hospital. By daylight, it was simply a local route. People used it because it saved time. But on a cold November night in 1983, that familiar path became the center of a murder investigation that would remain unsolved for years. The victim was 15-year-old Lynda Mann. She lived in Narborough with her family, including her mother, Kath Eastwood, and her stepfather, Eddie Eastwood. To the wider world, Lynda's name would later be connected to a forensic breakthrough. But before any of that, she was a schoolgirl with a normal life, a local teenager expected to return home like she always had. Her family could not have known that one routine evening would place them inside a case that would eventually reshape criminal investigation across the world. On Monday, November 21, 1983, Lynda left home during the evening. Different accounts describe the exact reason slightly differently. Some say she was going to visit a friend, while others mention babysitting plans. What remains consistent is that she was on a familiar local route in her own village, and she was expected back. There was no immediate reason for alarm. This was Narborough, not a place where families expected a teenage girl to vanish on a short walk. As the evening moved on, Lynda did not return. At first, that absence may have seemed like a delay, the kind of thing that can happen in a teenager's life without meaning anything sinister. But concern slowly grew inside the family home. Her sister told Kath and Eddie that Lynda still hadn't come back. Eddie went out searching, hoping to find her somewhere nearby or learn that she had simply gone to another house. But the search brought no answer. By the time police were called, the night had already taken a different shape. A missing teenager in a small village carries a particular kind of fear. Everyone wants the explanation to be simple: a misunderstanding, a change of plans, a friend's house, anything except the possibility that someone had taken her. But somewhere near the Black Pad, the truth was already waiting in the cold. The next morning, Tuesday, November 22nd, a hospital porter was walking to work. He often used the Black Pad as a shortcut between Narborough Church and Carlton Hayes Hospital. The morning was cold and the ground was touched with frost. As he passed the area, he noticed something near the grass and trees. At first, it did not look real. Some accounts described the sight as resembling a mannequin. Then the awful reality became clear. Lynda Mann's body had been found. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Her clothing had been removed and placed nearby, and her scarf had been used around her neck. The crime scene was close to a path known by local people, not hidden miles away in unfamiliar countryside. That detail mattered because it suggested the killer may have known the area. He had chosen a place that offered seclusion, but also a route familiar enough to reach and leave without drawing immediate attention. For Narborough, the shock was immediate. Violent crimes like this did not fit the village's sense of itself. Parents who had once allowed their children to use familiar routes began seeing those same paths differently. The black pad was no longer just a shortcut. It was the place where a young girl from the community had been found dead. And somewhere beyond the police tape, the person responsible had disappeared back into ordinary life. Investigators recovered biological evidence from the scene, but forensic science in 1983 had limits that are easy to forget today. The sample could help determine blood type and enzyme information, but it could not immediately identify a single person. Police learned that the offender had type A blood and an enzyme profile that narrowed the field only to a percentage of men. That was useful, but not enough. It gave investigators a category, not a name. Police pursued leads and considered the possibility that the killer was local. That theory made sense. The black pad was not a random tourist destination. It was a route someone from the area would understand. But knowing that the killer might live nearby did not make him easier to catch. In some ways, it made the case more disturbing. It meant he could be someone seen in shops, at work, or on the street, someone who blended in. As weeks passed, the investigation remained open, but active leads began to fade. Lynda's family was left with the cruelty of not knowing. In a murder case, time can feel like another enemy. The first hours bring urgency. The first days bring hope that someone will talk, that a witness will remember something, that a mistake will reveal the killer. But when those answers do not come, silence begins to settle over the case. For almost 3 years, Lynda's murder remained unsolved. Then, in the summer of 1986, another teenage girl disappeared in the same general area. Her name was Dawn Ashworth. She was 15 years old, lived in nearby Enderby, and had been walking home when she vanished. 2 days later, her body was found near another local pathway, 10 Pound Lane. The similarities to Lynda's murder were impossible to ignore. Dawn had also been sexually assaulted and strangled. The location was not far from where Lynda had been found. The pattern of the attack raised a terrifying possibility. Police were no longer looking at one isolated murder. They were likely dealing with the same offender. A man who had killed once, waited years, and then killed again. The fear that had haunted Narborough now spread more widely through the surrounding villages. After Dawn's murder, investigators focused on a local teenager named Richard Buckland. He reportedly knew details about Dawn's case that had not been made public, and under questioning, he confessed to killing her. But there was a problem that would become central to the entire case. Buckland denied murdering Lynda. Police believed the same person had killed both girls, so his denial created a serious question. Was he refusing to admit the earlier crime, or had the investigation found the wrong person? The answer came from a scientist at the University of Leicester. Dr. Alec Jeffreys had recently developed a technique that could identify individuals through patterns in their DNA. At the time, this was new territory. DNA fingerprinting had been used in other contexts, including immigration and family relationship questions, but it had not yet become a standard tool in criminal investigation. The idea that a microscopic biological sample could point to one person still sounded extraordinary. Police asked Jeffreys to compare the biological evidence from Lynda and Dawn's cases with a blood sample from Buckland. The results were stunning. The same man had left evidence in both attacks, confirming that Lynda and Dawn had been murdered by one offender, but that man was not Richard Buckland. His DNA did not match. Despite his confession to Dawn's murder, the science showed he was not the killer. That result changed everything. It meant Buckland had been cleared by a technique that had never before played such a role in a murder investigation. It also meant the real killer was still free. Police now had proof that the same man had attacked both girls, and they had a genetic profile that could identify him. but they did not yet have the person it belonged to. So investigators launched a massive screening operation. Local men from Narborough, Enderby, Littlethorpe, and surrounding areas were asked to provide samples. The effort became known as the blooding. It was voluntary, but the pressure inside the community was enormous. People wanted the killer caught. Many were willing to take part because every eliminated person brought police one step closer to the man they were hunting. Thousands of men gave samples. Testing centers were arranged, identification was checked, and the forensic work moved slowly by modern standards. The scale of the effort drew attention far beyond Leicestershire. This was not just a local search anymore. It was a glimpse into a future form of policing, one where science could narrow a manhunt in ways traditional investigation never could. But after thousands of samples, police still had no match. That failure created a chilling possibility. The killer had either fallen outside the screening net or he had found a way around it. And the second possibility would prove to be true. In 1987, a conversation in a pub reached police. A man named Ian Kelly had reportedly admitted that he had taken the DNA test for someone else. The person he had helped was Colin Pitchfork, a local baker. Pitchfork was not an unknown outsider. He lived in the area, worked locally, and had a family. He had already been questioned earlier about his movements on the night Lynda was killed. According to later accounts, he persuaded Kelly to impersonate him during the testing process, using false identification. The plan was meant to make the police believe Pitchfork had already been eliminated. Instead, it became the mistake that exposed him. Police arrested Colin Pitchfork. When his DNA was tested, it matched the biological evidence from both murder scenes. The man who had escaped the dragnet by sending someone else in his place had been identified by the very science he tried to avoid. After years of fear, suspicion, and false certainty, the investigation finally had an answer. Pitchfork confessed to murdering both Lynda Mann and Don Ashworth. He also admitted to other sexual offenses. One detail from Lynda's case remains especially disturbing. When he attacked her, his car was reportedly parked nearby with his baby son inside. That detail stripped away any image of the killer as a distant shadow. He had been close, ordinary-looking, and able to return to daily life after committing unimaginable violence. In January of 1988, Colin Pitchfork appeared at Leicester Crown Court. He pleaded guilty to 2 murders, 2 rapes, 2 indecent assaults, and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. He received a life sentence with a minimum term of 30 years, later reduced to 28 years. His conviction became historic because he was the first person convicted of murder after being identified by DNA fingerprinting. But the scientific milestone should never overshadow the human cost. DNA did not save Lynda Mann. It did not save Don Ashworth. It came after both girls had already been taken. What it did do was reveal the truth when other forms of investigation had failed. It cleared Richard Buckland before a false confession could become a permanent miscarriage of justice, and it identified the real killer when he tried to hide behind another man's sample. In later years, Pitchfork's parole hearings repeatedly brought the case back into public attention. He was released on license in 2021, but was recalled to prison 2 months later after concerns about his behavior. Family members continued to speak publicly against his release, including Lynda's sisters, Sue Gatrick and Rebecca Eastwood. For them, this was not a historical case or a forensic lesson. It was the loss of someone they loved, reopened each time his name returned to the news. The murder of Lynda Mann changed forensic science, but before it became a landmark, It was a family tragedy. A 15-year-old girl left home on a November evening and never came back. Her death exposed the limits of the old investigative world and helped bring in a new one, where DNA could speak when suspects lied, witnesses failed, and fear clouded judgment. Narborough's black pad still carries the weight of that history. It reminds us that the most ordinary places can become part of something terrible, and that evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it lives nearby, goes to work, raises a family, and waits for the world to look somewhere else. In Lynda Mann's case, it took another murder, a village-wide search, and a scientific breakthrough to reveal the truth hidden in plain sight.